And this is their beautiful son, Amenhotep IV, who he changed his name to Akhenaten, because at that particular time he was worshipped the god Aten. Still a monotheistic concept of one God. At one point, we call God by different names depending on what period it is. Just like in the Bible, at one point God is called El. Another point God is called Elohim. Another point God is called Yahweh. Is that polytheism? If that's not polytheism, a concept of many gods, then why they come into Africa and say we believed in polytheism? But they destroyed her face, hacked it out because she was a beautiful African queen of the Nile Valley and trying to destroy anything of the Nile Valley relating to African origin of civilization, which was indigenous to the African Nile Valley. But Akhenaten studied what his ancestors had laid down. And what did he study? He studied monotheism. Monotheism, the concept of one God that goes all the way back to Ptah. And there were others long before him. You can go throughout the African continent and see a one God concept, brothers and sisters. You can go to Kenya to our brothers and sisters there and see that Ngai among the Kikuyu people also had a one God concept. You can go to Mali and see our Dogon brothers who also had Amma as the one God concept. Oladamere, also a one God concept. Monotheism is throughout the African Nile Valley. Akhenaten also studied the concept of the Trinity, body, mind, and soul. This was already taught in Africa for countless thousands of years, the earliest concept of the Trinity. Also going back to Aset, Haru, and Asaru, the earliest concepts of the Trinity. And Akhenaten also, who built his city in Tel Amarna. His city was destroyed because he was nonviolent. Now we got two historical records to show that nonviolence doesn't work. Peace be upon Martin Luther King, but he being nonviolent too, went all the way to speak to Gandhi, but yet we got a historical record to show that nonviolent didn't even work for Akhenaten. They destroyed his kingdom because he was nonviolent. So we got a record, two historical records that show that nonviolence doesn't work. We're a spiritual people. We don't commit aggression on no one, but you got the God-given right to defend yourself if someone tries to attack you. Huh? But here they try to say about Akhenaten, there is a reason why his lips look this way, because he's suffering from glandular disease. Huh? African people had all types of facial characteristics. Thin nose, wide nose, thin lips, big lips, all types of facial characteristics. There's no one prototype that defines an African facial characteristic. But Martin Burnell in his book, and he said, if Europeans were treating blacks as badly as they did throughout the 19th century, blacks had to be turned into animals or at best subhumans. The noble Caucasian was incapable of treating other full humans in such ways. This inversion set the scene for the racial and the main aspect of the Egyptian problem. If it had been scientifically proved that blacks were biologically incapable of civilization, how could one explain ancient Egypt, which was inconveniently placed on the African continent? Inconveniently placed on the African continent. Just placed there, huh? There were two or rather three solutions. The first was to deny that the ancient Egyptians were black. The second was to deny that the ancient Egyptians had created a true civilization. The third was to make doubly sure by denying both. The last has been preferred by most 19th and 20th century historians. That's why in February 1992 in Time it says no plausible evidence exists in these claims of Egyptian negritude. Innate, psychopathic racists, they're trying to deny the African origin of civilization coming up out of the African Nile Valley. But even when they came in, they always knocked off the heads and said over time the heads fell off. But why isn't the arm off? Why isn't the leg off? And then chiseled out the face and put the face on the ground here, so the world could not see the African builders, Ursa Ma'at Ra, Septep and Ra. Ursa Ma'at Ra, meaning the power of truth, justice, and righteousness, chosen by Ra, Ramesu, Ramses II. And now we see its face right here, chiseled out, so the world could not see the African features of the builders of civilization of the Nile Valley. That's why they always want to give you a painted picture version of their version. But let's go back to the Nile Valley and see what they have done to desecrate our African ancestral sacred sites. Like Dr. John Henry Clark, our Grand Master teacher, said, that which was sacred to us, white folks desecrated it and caused us to laugh at. So we laughed at the way we looked. We laughed at our nose and lips, and they even put nose and lips, knocked them off and put them in the museum for people to laugh at. But what was physically done to the temples in Africa, brothers and sisters, was spiritually and psychologically done to Africans right here. Now here, this one here has become a muanthropoid. He wants to become a mutant, human-like thing. But here, Michael Jackson, not only that, he had a melanin extraction. Took melanin out of him. And now he has become a muanthropoid, a mutant human-like thing. And the only thing he can give you is Egyptian funk. This is the spiritual murder on our children. Our culture is being crucified. Our culture is going through a Holocaust, brothers and sisters. And that's why they know the final stages of liberation is taking place right now. And they're doing everything they can to cap it up. But why didn't Michael Jackson know about King Tutankhamun, that we know as King Tut? Had he known about his African ancestral story, he would not have been a victim of self-hate. But this young king, in fact, he died at about 18 years old, so that tells us that he ruled the throne as a very young man. And in the Cairo Museum, they try to say this is a slave in gold. Huh? But we can see where the grave robbers, the ghouls, came and robbed from our African ancestral sacred tombs. This is Sheikh Abdul Nati. His father showed Carter where King Tutankhamun's tomb was at. And he shouldn't have not shown Carter that tomb at all, because our ancestors built those tombs for us to rest in peace. And we built the tombs in the West Bank. Why in the West? Because the sun goes down in the West and dies in the West, always keeping ourselves with the forces of nature. We built the temples in the East Bank because that's where the sun comes up at life. Huh? Our ancestors did everything in corresponding with the forces of the high archaeological forces that we now call nature today, that came from the Netters. Huh? And they're going to tell you, you're a sun worship. You worship the air. Let me cover up your nose and your mouth and see how long you live. Let me pollute your water and see how long you live. Had they paid homage to the elements, you would not have polluted air out there now. You would not have a hole in the ozone shield. You might welcome a hole in the ozone shield, because as these ultraviolet waves are coming into the Earth's atmosphere, you got to have melanin to make it now. They say, as it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the ending. But I'm standing in front of King Tutankhamun's tomb right here. But this is what they have done, brothers and sisters, when the white boys came in. When they came in with their beastly ways, they took and set up a dining table in one of the neighboring tombs next to King Tutankhamun. Have no respect, so if it belonged to them, they would not have desecrated it like this. Huh? So here you see them right here, desecrating your African ancestral sacred sites. In order to destroy a people, you must destroy that which is sacred to them. You destroy their culture. You destroy their God concept. You destroy their spirituality and their mores and folkways, all their spiritual way of life, and you have a destruction of the people that makes them eternal slaves. Huh? So here these are the grave robbers. These are the ghouls that rob your ancestral sacred sites. Brothers and sisters, let's go to the movie The Curse of King Tut so we can see how these barbarians ransacked and robbed our African ancestors' sacred sites.
For the next few weeks, work continued furiously 24 hours a day. There were obstacles of all kinds, but the accumulated rubble of 3,000 years was slowly and patiently